At first sight, it's hard to imagine that Fetullah Gulen and his organization could be a threat. But he's made it onto Turkey's most wanted list. How'd he get there? He began as a religious cleric and laid the groundwork for an organization that would spread across the globe. He called it Hizmet. His religious undertone gained him a strong and loyal following, allowing him to inch towards his own agenda, which eventually got exposed. His former ally of 40 years reveals Gülen's goals, which he states started in the 70s.
Gülen devleti ele geçirme peşindedir. Devleti ele geçirerek halifeliğini ilan etmek.
And how would he do that?
Dünyayı sırtınıza alıp taşıyabilecek güce ulaşacağınıza ne kadar?
You must move within the arteries of the system without anyone noticing your existence. Until you reach all the power centers, you must wait until a time where you have all the state power, and you have brought to your side all the power of the constitutional institutions in Turkey.
And that's what he did. He began in 1976 by opening his first student dormitory, which served as a place to hold religious discussions on the side. This became the template for all Gülen-inspired tuition centers in schools. The schools were called lighthouses, and they had a dual purpose, providing income for the organization and acting as a recruitment agency. To be clear, for some students, the schools were just a place where they got their education, but for many, specifically high-achieving and talented students, they were being groomed for something else. The recruitment of each student was different. Some were offered scholarships and promised admissions into leading universities. And then there were many cases of cheating on exams and cronyism that allowed for these hand-picked high achievers to be placed into the military, judiciary, and police institutions. Once the recruits were positioned and empowered, they were asked to now give back to the organization by donating 10 to 20% of their salaries. This wasn't just limited to members in Turkey. In an article published by the Washington Post, a witness testifies that, quote, her husband, a Turk, had been involved in the Gülen movement, and that Turkish teachers at the Ohio school had to turn over 40% of their salaries to a secret fund used by the movement. Like most organizations, this one also had a hierarchical structure. It consists of many circles which work as small secretive cells. The cells vary in size, but generally consist of an abi or abla that directs its members. Members are kept in the dark about other cells and don't have contact with anyone other than their directors. Cells that are more vital to the organization with members in high-ranking positions are so secretive that they communicate through code names. Many members, especially ones who've infiltrated institutions, were told to leave religious obligations like prayer and abstaining from alcohol just to avoid being detected as being part of the organization. For the sake of furthering their political agenda, they were willing to play with their religious principles just to secure their strategic posts. After 20 years of loyalty to the organization, Hüseyin Gülerce, the former editor-in-chief of Zaman, which used to be one of Turkey's leading newspapers, revealed the following.
1. Bunların namaz kılması yasak. 2. İçki içmesi serbest. 3. Hiçbir açık vermemeleri için diğer subaylar ne yapıyorlarsa aynısını yapmak zorundalar.
Such guidelines helped foster the expansion of the Gülen organization rapidly. By the 1990s, Gülen brokered key alliances within the political elite and ran a multi-million-dollar empire with TV stations, a newspaper, a major bank, and Turkey's largest trade association. His main objectives were to protect his organization's interests and to undermine his competition at all costs. Within Turkey, he'd strategically shift his allegiances easily to whoever was the governing power, like in the cases with the military coup of 1980 and the forced resignation of the government under military pressure in 1997. All the while, his organization was gaining momentum internationally as well. He developed strong networks in the West, particularly in the US, and opened over 2,000 schools worldwide. In the late 1990s, Gülen was wanted for plotting to overthrow the Turkish state. He fled to the United States, citing health problems. This is around the time his private videos surfaced, revealing his agenda. Although he's away living in a compound in Pennsylvania under self-imposed exile, he's continued to direct the organization for decades and strengthened his state within the state, which became known in Turkey as the parallel state. When the 2002 elections came around, AK Party won by a landslide, and Gülen aligned himself with the new governing party, all the while committing treason. His network of infiltrators continued to give him access to confidential state information. Members of the organization often collaborated amongst themselves to smear the reputation of rivals through wiretapping, leaking confidential information, and fabricating evidence. One of the biggest examples of this was the 2007 Ergenekon case, where Gülenists targeted high-ranking military officials. They released documents that led to the jailing of 275 high-ranking officials. Later, the documents were found to be forged, and even though the falsely accused were later acquitted, the organization was able to secure prominent posts for themselves from the new vacancies. It was around this time that a growing rift between the AK Party and the Gülen organization emerged. In 2010, Hakan Fidan, who was working in the Prime Ministry at the time, was appointed as the head of Turkey's National Intelligence Organization. Gülen disapproved of Fidan's appointment. More controversy occurred when secret peace talks between the MIT and the PKK in Oslo were sabotaged. Confidential recordings were leaked to the media, and in 2012, Fidan was called for investigation by Gülen prosecutors who are currently under arrest. In 2013, Erdogan announced that tuition centers would be shut down nationwide. This was a big blow to the organization, since most of these centers were operated by Gülen and fed his organization. With upcoming elections, Gülen started a smear campaign accusing AK Party members of corruption. But this didn't stop them from winning several landslide election victories, which left the Gülen organization increasingly frustrated. As more light was shed on Gülen's parallel state, both Gülen and his organization lost considerable credibility and legitimacy among the Turkish public. Then, on July 15th of 2016, the Turkish people were faced with the bloodiest coup attempt in the country's history. 249 people lost their lives. And as the intense night of defiance unfolded, the coup plotters were identified and found to be aligned to the Gülen organization. Most of them later testified to this. These series of events have managed to propel Gülen to the forefront of Turkey's most wanted list, and the government has put out a request for his extradition.